Picture this. You spend months getting ready for your 30th birthday. You rent a beautiful lake house, buy all your family's favorite snacks, even cover their gas so they don't have to worry about it. You clean every corner, set up the grill, and wait. But no one shows up. Not a single text, no calls. Hours go by, and you're sitting there with a cake that only has your name on it. Completely alone. Then, out of nowhere, you check Instagram, and there it is. Your whole family smiling, laughing, having a barbecue at another lake house. No invite, no heads up, just you, totally left out. That's the moment it hits you hard. The people you've carried for years don't even carry enough to include you. Hey, I'm James, and I just turned 30. For most of my life, I was the guy who dropped everything for family, no questions asked. But I was never the favorite. That spot always went to my sister Sarah. My parents treated her like she was the center of the universe, and the rest of us, we were just there in the background. Sarah always got what she wanted, and me? I had to work my tail off just to get scraps, and even then, sometimes it didn't stay with me, but I never said a word. I thought that's just how families are. You show up, you help out, and maybe someday they'll notice you. I busted my ass, got a degree, and started a small business from scratch. It's nothing huge, but it pays the bills and helps me support my family when they're in trouble. And believe me, they were always in trouble. I gave my dad John gas money when he was short. I loaned Sarah money to pay off her credit cards. I helped my mom Mary keep the mortgage going when Dad's work hours got cut. What started small kept going non-stop. They stopped saying thanks. I only got calls when someone needed help. I told myself they loved me, but deep down, I knew I was fooling myself. This year I hit the big 3, and honestly all I wanted was something simple. A weekend where I actually felt seen and appreciated by the people I call family. Nothing extravagant or over the top, just a quiet getaway at a lake house a couple hours outside the city. I wasn't asking for a party or a crowd, just a chance to spend some real time together, laugh, maybe reconnect, and feel like a family for one. It sounds basic, but sometimes the simplest things feel like a luxury when you've been overlooked for so long. I booked the lake house months ahead, way before the date, so I wouldn't have to scramble last minute. I wanted to make sure it was perfect. I sent out invites to every family member, carefully making sure I included everyone, especially Sarah and her kids. To make it easy for them, I even offered to cover their gas money and said I'd carpool with them so no one would have any excuse about transportation or costs. Everyone said they'd be there. They said they were excited. I was stoked. I pictured us all sitting around the fire pit, sharing stories, grilling food, my niece and nephew running around by the lake, the kind of weekend you see in movies but rarely live in real life. I held onto that image like a lifeline. The morning of my birthday, I woke up early, feeling a mix of excitement and nerves. I didn't want to mess this up. I spent hours cleaning the lake house from top to bottom. I wiped down every surface, vacuumed the floors, made sure the kitchen was spotless. Then, I went room to room, setting up little welcome bags for each person. Stuff like snacks, bottled water, maybe a small gift or something personal. It was my way of saying, I care, I planned this for you. Next, I stocked the fridge with all the drinks I knew they liked. Beers for the adults, sodas for the kids, and plenty of ice to keep everything cold. Then I fired up the grill to make sure it was ready for the steaks I planned to cook later. I wanted this to feel special, warm, and inviting. All day, I kept checking my phone, waiting, hoping. Every time it buzzed, my heart jumped. Maybe it was the message I'd been waiting for, the text saying, we're on our way, or running a little late, see you soon. But nothing came. Noon passed, then 2 p.m. came and went, then 5 p.m. The sun started dipping lower, casting long shadows across the water. By 8 p.m., the only sound was the gentle splash of waves against the dock. I was completely alone on the back deck, staring out at the lake as the sun disappeared behind the trees. The world felt quiet and still, in a way that crushed me inside. Inside the kitchen, 6 steaks were waiting in the fridge, perfectly seasoned but untouched. A birthday cake with Happy 30th James written on it sat on the counter. No candles lit, no one singing, no laughter, just cold silence. The cake, instead of being a joyful symbol, felt like a cruel joke staring me in the face. I wanted to scream, to cry, to call someone, anyone, but the numbness held me still. I didn't cry that night. I couldn't. The shock had frozen me, left me empty, but then after the silence it hit me like a brick. They didn't care. Not enough to send a single text, not enough to call and say sorry we're running late or something came up we can't make it. Nothing. I was completely ghosted, treated like a stranger, or worse, a coworker they barely knew. Not the guy who had spent years carrying their burdens, paying their bills, cleaning their messes, supporting their dreams. It was like I had been invisible all along. And that realization burned deeper than any disappointment. It wasn't just about a missed birthday. It was about years of being unseen and taken for granted. The times I worked overtime to cover their expenses. The late nights I stayed awake making sure they were okay. The emotional weight I carried alone, hoping someday they'd notice, someday they'd appreciate me. But now, all that hope felt shattered, like glass on the floor. I sat there, in the dark, watching the stars come out one by one, feeling more alone than ever. The people I thought were my family didn't even care enough to show up for one simple day, and that day was supposed to be mine. My first real birthday as a grown man, the one I wanted to remember for good reasons. Instead, it was a painful reminder that maybe I was just carrying a family that didn't want me. 2 days after my birthday, I was just scrolling through Instagram, not expecting much, when I saw it. Sarah had posted a bunch of pictures, everyone smiling, my parents holding her kids, a barbecue on a dock by a lake. But it wasn't at my lake house, it was some other place, 2 hours away in the opposite direction. The date? Same weekend. They planned a whole family trip without even telling me. The caption tore me apart. So good to unplug with the people who meant nothing like family time. Grateful for our tribe. My name wasn't tagged once, not even a single mention. I stared at those pictures, trying to tell myself it was just a mistake. Maybe something last minute, maybe they didn't mean to leave me out. But then I noticed the matching shirts, the same menu on the table, the carefully planned setup. It wasn't a spur-of-the-moment thing. It was planned. They chose to leave me out. The worst part? I wasn't shocked. It felt like the last piece of a puzzle I'd been ignoring for years. All the times they canceled plans, the calls I made that went unanswered, the bills I covered without a thank you, it finally made sense. I wasn't family to them. I was their safety net, their ATM, the one who cleaned up their mess while they partied without me. I didn't send any texts or make calls. I just sat with it, letting the truth burn in me like ashes after a fire. The next morning, I decided to do something. First, I called the bank. Years ago, Sarah had gotten me to co-sign a business loan. I was the guarantor, but she hadn't paid in full for 7 months and it was wrecking my credit. I told the bank I was done. They started collections with her directly. Then I called about John's truck lease. I'd been covering it since last spring when he said he was behind on payments. I canceled the auto pay and told them to bill him. Last, I canceled my mom Mary's mortgage payment. That one hurt. I'd sent $1,000, 0 cents a month for 3 years, thinking I was saving the family home. But that day I just stopped. That night, my phone exploded. Mary texted first, asking, "Did something happen?" I replied, "Yeah." I finally took the hint. Then I turned my phone off as the calls kept coming. Mary, John, Sarah, one after another. I didn't answer. For once, I wanted them to feel the silence they'd given me for years. By morning, there were 17 missed calls, 5 voicemails, and a text from John. "Your mother's in tears. What's going on?" I didn't reply. I wanted them to sit with the emptiness, just like I did that night, waiting for a family that never showed up. Sarah emailed me later, trying to explain, "Hey, I didn't know you'd be so hurt. It was a spontaneous trip. Can we talk?" Spontaneous? With matching shirts and a booked house weeks ahead? I didn't respond. Then I listened to Mary's voicemail. Her voice was shaky. "James, honey, I don't understand. The mortgage payment didn't go through. Are you okay?" She wasn't worried about me, just the house. No mention of my birthday. It hurt, but it wasn't new. Sarah called and texted again. "I didn't think you'd be this dramatic. We figured you'd be busy with your own life. You're always working." That cut deep. She twisted my hard work, the work that kept their lives going, into an excuse for leaving me out. I finally answered, "You're right. I'm always working. Working to keep your lives afloat. John's truck, Mary's house, your loan. I showed up, but you didn't know." She read it immediately. No reply. The fallout was quick. Mary texted about late fees on the mortgage. John said the truck company threatened to tow. Sarah's loan got flagged for delinquency. They panicked, but I stayed quiet. They thought I'd fold. But I was done. Then I remembered something else. A few years back, I helped John start an LLC for his failed business because his credit was bad. Earlier this year, he used that account, my account, to get a $12,000 0 cents credit line without telling me. When a payment was late, I contacted the state, removed my name, and told the lender I wasn't responsible. The account got frozen. John texted, "Did you touch the business? I can't access the account." "This isn't funny, James." Funny? I wasn't laughing. Sarah showed up at my door holding a Starbucks cup like everything was casual. I didn't open it. She texted, "I know you're in there. Can we talk?" I replied, "You made your priorities clear." She begged, "I didn't know you were hurting." I shot back, "That's the point. You never asked." She left, defeated. A week after I cut off all the payments, Mary called me. I saw her name on my phone and took a deep breath. Feeling a strange mix of dread and relief, I was ready to face whatever came next, ready to finally put an end to years of carrying a family that never seemed to notice me. When I answered, her voice was calm, almost too calm, like she was trying to hold back a scream or tears, but didn't want me to hear it. She said, "James, what's going on? Your father's furious. The business account is locked. The truck company won't stop calling. Sarah's in tears over the loan. Are you doing all this because we missed your birthday?" I almost laughed out loud. The idea that this was about one day, one birthday, felt absurd compared to everything that had happened before. I said, "It's not about the birthday." My voice was steady, even though my heart was pounding. "It's about every single year before it." There was a long pause on the other end, and then she sighed deeply. "Families fight, James," she said quietly. "They hurt each other sometimes. But that doesn't mean you have to destroy everything." "Destroy?" I felt my jaw tighten. "You think I destroyed something?" I asked, my voice sharper now, full of the weight I'd been holding inside. "All I did was stop cleaning up your messes. You destroyed it yourselves. You built this chaos, and I was the one fixing it all while you ignored me." Silence filled the line for a few seconds, thick and heavy. Then her voice softened, almost a whisper. "We didn't mean to hurt you." I looked out the window at the darkening sky and said plainly, "I know. But you did." Another long pause stretched between us, full of everything we hadn't said before. Then she asked, her voice trembling a little, "So what now? Are you cutting us off for good?" I closed my eyes and took a slow, steadying breath. The moment felt like a knife hanging over me, waiting to fall. I answered honestly, "I'm not cutting you off. I'm done carrying you." That was it. She hung up, and I didn't call back. I sat there in silence for a long time, feeling the strange relief of finally saying it out loud. I wasn't the family's fixer anymore. I wasn't their safety net or their backup plan. I was done being invisible. The silence on the phone was the loudest thing I'd ever heard, but it felt like freedom. I had finally set a boundary that I'd been afraid to draw for years. I was no longer going to be the invisible man, the forgotten one who paid for everything but got nothing in return. That night, I lay awake thinking about all the years I'd poured myself into my family, how I'd begged silently for their love and recognition but never got it. I realized that sometimes, loving someone doesn't mean carrying their weight forever. Sometimes, love means stepping back, standing up for yourself, and letting the people who hurt you feel the emptiness they created. It was painful, yeah. But it was also the most honest thing I'd done in a long time. I was finally standing up for me, and that felt like a kind of victory not over them, but over the years of neglect and hurt. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I could breathe again. The weight was off my shoulders. I wasn't alone anymore, at least not in the way that crushed me. And that, more than anything else, was the moment I started to heal. The cracks in my family's foundation didn't take long to spread once I stopped carrying the weight. Almost immediately, Sarah posted a vague but pointed rant on Facebook about entitled people who forget what family means. It was clearly about me, though she never mentioned my name. That post got a lot of reactions, sympathy from some, confusion from others. Meanwhile, John started calling me nonstop, begging for just one more payment to cover his truck. His voice was shaky, desperate, but I didn't answer. I was done with the constant asking and the one-sided relationship. Not long after, a letter arrived from the mortgage company. It was official. Foreclosure proceedings had begun on my parents' house. I stared at that letter, the cold, hard reality hitting me in the chest. But instead of panicking, I set it aside and did nothing. I'd been paying their bills and keeping their lives afloat for years, without thanks or recognition. Suddenly, when I stopped, that's when they finally noticed, but it was too late. A few days later, Sarah showed up at my door, looking completely exhausted, holding a thick folder of loan documents. Her eyes looked tired and desperate. She said quietly, "The bank might pause collections if I pay something now." I didn't even take the folder from her hands. I just looked her in the eye and said, "That's between you and the bank." Her eyes filled with tears as she whispered, "You've always helped before." I took a deep breath and said, "That's exactly the problem, Sarah. You left me alone on my birthday. Not just physically, emotionally too. You made a choice to exclude me, and now I'm making mine." She started crying, choking back sobs, and said, "I didn't think it would hurt you this much." I smiled bitterly and told her, "That's because you never thought about me at all." She nodded silently, tears rolling down her cheeks, and left without another word. A month later, the house was officially lost to foreclosure. Mary and John moved in with Sarah, but their situation only got worse. Within 2 weeks, the whole thing fell apart. John's truck was repossessed because he couldn't make payments anymore. Sarah's credit took a nosedive from the unpaid loans and debts. The family that once relied on me was now crumbling without my support. And me? I was okay. I went back to that lake, the one I had rented for my 30th birthday, alone. I grilled a steak just for myself, opened a book, and watched the sun set over the water. It wasn't lonely. It was peaceful. A few weeks later, I received a handwritten letter from Mary. Her handwriting was shaky but sincere. She wrote, "James, I'm sorry. I didn't realize how much you did for us until it was all gone. I miss you, and I hope someday we can talk, not as a mother and her safety net, but as people who can rebuild." I read that letter 3 times before folding it carefully and putting it away. I wasn't ready to reply, maybe I never will be. But for the first time in my life, I felt free. Free from chasing their approval that never came, free from begging to be seen and appreciated, free from carrying a family that only remembered me when the bills came. That freedom, that peace, that was the best birthday gift I ever gave myself. It wasn't wrapped in paper or tied with a bow. It was the gift of finally standing up for myself and choosing my own happiness. One of the hardest things to learn in life is that sometimes loving others means loving yourself first. We all want to be there for our family and friends, to help them through tough times, and to show up whenever they need us. But what happens when that giving turns into a one-way street? When you're always the one giving and no one ever stops to appreciate or even notice? That's when it's time to set boundaries and start valuing yourself. This story shows how someone gave so much of their time, money, and heart to support their family, covering bills, loans, car payments, emotional support, only to be left alone on a birthday that should have been about celebration and connection. That kind of hurt cuts deep, but what makes it even harder is realizing that your efforts have been taken for granted for years and no one really saw or respected what you did. It's easy to feel guilty when you think about stepping back, especially with family. We grow up believing that family means endless sacrifice, no matter the cost. We feel responsible for fixing things, making sure everyone's okay, even if it means ignoring our own needs. But that mindset can trap you in a cycle of pain and exhaustion. You end up carrying a weight so heavy that it crushes your happiness and sense of self. Setting boundaries isn't about punishing those you care about. It's about protecting your own peace and mental health. It means learning to say no when giving more would harm you. It means understanding that your love is valuable, but so is your well-being. When you do this, you're not being selfish. You're practicing self-care, and that's something everyone deserves. Boundaries also teach others how to treat you. If people realize you won't always be the one cleaning up messes or bailing them out, they start to respect your time and effort more. This can lead to healthier, more balanced relationships where everyone gives and receives. True love and respect don't come from endless sacrifice. They come from mutual care and understanding. Finding the courage to set boundaries is never easy. It might feel scary or lonely at first. You might worry about disappointing people or causing conflict. But staying in unhealthy patterns only prolongs the pain. When you finally choose yourself, you open the door to freedom. Freedom from chasing approval. Freedom from feeling invisible. Freedom to build a life where you are truly valued. The narrator's journey in this story shows us that standing up for yourself can be the most powerful act of love. Love for yourself, and eventually for others. When you protect your peace, you create space for genuine connection, happiness, and respect. You remind yourself that you matter just as much as anyone else. So if you're feeling overwhelmed, unseen, or drained by those around you, remember, it's okay to set limits. It's okay to say no. It's okay to choose your peace. Because at the end of the day, you deserve to be treated with kindness and respect, especially by the people who say they love you.